Hi, good afternoon. This is July 8th, 2019. It's about 5:30 p.m. in the evening. This is a meeting of the Recreation and Parks Committee. It's great to see so many people joining us here today to get this information and join in. Love when that happens. We're joined by a lot of different people in the area here, so it's going to be good. We're going to get into some good discussion, get some good information here. Let's see, who wants to go first?
Did you introduce your committee yet?
Do you guys want to be introduced? There you go. There you go. We have the future mayor, Mrs. Oda here, and Mr. Terwilliger to my left. My name is Brock Heath as chair. We're ready to get started.
Well, fine. And I'm glad to see everybody here too as well. This is, you all received the packet of information for your consideration. I think everybody has had a chance to digest that. And I'll just have a few comments, if it's all right with you, Chairman Brock.
Of course, Mayor.
It's never been a secret that during my tenure as mayor that I've always listed recreation as one of our priorities for our city. This initiative that has been presented is for the youth of Troy specifically, as well as how it benefits families in Troy. And if you know me, those were two things in my career, working with young people, and families are important to me. So I'll just say that to start with. We do have a great park, Duke Park. It's a space that we can grow, and we all know what we've had to deal with this year, just this year, and that is the experience of flooding at the Newp ball fields. That entered into my thinking, including all those young kiddos and people that had would have had more of an opportunity to play baseball than they got this year. We know soccer is a continually growing sport in our community and with the young people, and how many people participate in the soccer program. And our Duke Park has space for our soccer fields and more. With the Women's World Cup Championship, I look for that to even increase in its enthusiasm for the sport. We all know that the Troy Strawberry Festival holds a soccer tournament. It's one of the premier regional events, and we always look for more fields of play. So that entered into my thinking. Then there's the summer heat and humidity that we all have dealt with, and it's taken its toll on all of us. And then looking at some of the comments that have been made, a splash pad would be good for all of us to consider. But saying that, I've always, and people who've known me over those 16 years know, I've always wanted activities for people of all ages. I'm focusing on young families and the youth, but we've had a variety of opportunities. Some like this, some like that. We all have different opportunities, and we're blessed in Troy to have a variety. Example, seniors have pickleball, and that's a very popular for seniors. I just want people to see that there's a scope here, and that also is at Duke Park. So I'm starting to focus. So the time seems to be right with all those things that we have experienced and seen, the things that we have available, that we consider the youth and we consider families. And Duke Park is a great place, and it has opportunities for us to grow and enjoy. So we all know that there was a vote in a recent election where it turned out to be obviously very definite against the levy. However, there was also a lot of things added to that in consideration. So this initiative is focused on just one place, and that's Duke Park. Not any place else, just Duke Park. Certainly the implications are there for our youth, for the future, our families of the future. Yeah, we use that park to to our advantage. But it also has a couple other features I'd just like to throw out before you start your discussion, and that is has the potential for an economic impact to our community. If you think of that, all the tournaments that could be brought, all the tournaments that we have, and how that can be enhanced with this initiative. And it also has an implication for the entire workforce development program that we've been all talking about. We have jobs. It's our job to bring people in to take those jobs. The more amenities, the more choice people have to move into our region and hopefully in Troy community. That enters into my thinking on why I thought the time was right to do that. It's my strong opinion. I'm just saying this to everybody. It's my strong that this initiative will require the endorsement and total commitment of our organizational stakeholders. Sitting in front of me right now are two of those organizational, but we have the Troy soccer parents, we have the Troy junior baseball. They could be our major organizational stakeholders that benefit by this initiative. How do I say this? I'm in my last 6 months of my tenure as mayor, and ultimately this decision, this discussion tonight is not about me. It is about the subcommittee looking to make a decision and see if it's the right move for an initiative. It's the organizations for their support. It's the full council that will be making a decision, and and the new administration. And you've mentioned that. And finally, all the citizens. All of us are stakeholders. All of us are stakeholders to make, if this initiative is going to move forward, it's going to take a lot of partners. And I've said that forever, that partnerships is what makes Troy special. And I hope this initiative will allow that discussion to take place. And hopefully you will see the value of focusing on one park, developing that for the youth and the families of our community. I think I've said enough. Thank you.
Appreciate that, Mayor.
Thank
and we definitely want to hear from as many people as we can. This is a big deal for the city of Troy. And we've got the park board here and the rec board, which I got to serve on for several years, so I see a lot of good friends there. So what I'd like to do is go around and get some information and some opinions and some ideas from both those bodies as well. We absolutely will open it up to the public and anyone else who wants to talk in just a second, because we do want to get everybody's opinion. Before we do that, though, the other people on the subcommittee here with me, do you have any questions or answers yet? I know we've got some more information to hear. Good?
Waiting for info.
Waiting for info, good. Park and Recs, anybody want to give us your opinions and positions on this, please?
Is there going to be a presentation given to us as to what is being anticipated?
I gave you my comments and the packet of information. I understand everybody got that.
I have lots of comments,
Okay.
but I'm waiting for some presentation to be made to us.
I think I just did.
You gave us the presentation?
What you just heard
So you asked us to
is my initiative.
Could you get them people with a microphone down there? We can't hear them.
There is a, yep.
What are we being asked to do?
I'm asking you to endorse the initiative, but that's for me, and it's going to be you and others that are going to have to, if you choose to endorse and commit to the program, the initiative, then I'm asking for the support of this community in that initiative. I have 6 more months. I'm looking at with vision to the future, what I think would be good for Troy, what would be good for young people in our community and families. So it has other implications, as I shared, with economic impact and workforce development, but that's secondary to what I see we need to do for our youth in this community. So yes, I am asking you to consider It's your discussion, it's not mine.
So I guess, Mr. Cappers, before we get to a level of an endorsement, what questions do you have for the staff at this point?
Well, I've only been involved in one presentation.
Okay,
So I think I know what's going on, but I'm not sure my other commissioners know what's going on.
okay,
I don't know if you've been involved in too many of the meetings. I know that our staff has not been involved in a lot of the recent meetings.
right.
Our park superintendent has not been involved.
Maybe just a little closer, yep.
How you guys doing?
You're not, we can't see you, but we hear you now.
I can't see you.
He's not that pretty, you don't want to see him anyway.
I don't even see you.
So anyway-
Go here, please, we can't see you.
Podium will not.
He's not very pretty. What's up?
Is it time? I don't have the microphone.
You want me? Mr.
Do
Cappers?
you want to give information?
Yeah. Mr. Cappers, I've been asked by the chairman to kind of bring maybe people up to speed so we can maybe expedite some of this. In essence, what I believe is being proposed is an initiative by the mayors and the mayor-elect for improvements to Duke Park. The improvements would consist of 3 primary areas. One would be 3 new soccer fields at McDade, what's informally known as the McDade property, including improvements to an entrance off of Riverside, a center area improvement, which would consist of a miniature golf course similar to one that exists at KC Geiger Park in St. Mary's, a splash pad, which was the #1 most requested item out of the survey, and improvements for a maintenance building to remove the maintenance building that exists on the Hobart Arena property, a new concession stand or transactional building, I think is what they've called it, and finally there is at the northern part of Duke Park, at what is informally known as the Huelskamp property, would be a wheel of 5 baseball fields and a t-ball field. The purpose of that, and in conjunction, I see lots of red shirts out there, maybe 5 members of Troy Junior Baseball out there. One of the considerations would be to relocate Troy Junior Baseball with their approval from the 25A new property to these new fields. I can't speak much beyond that, except that's sort of how I see things. I know that Mr. Frigge and Mr. Tiddington and the mayor worked hard to come up with some numbers that would make this palatable, and it's my understanding that the scope of this project is approximately $12 million, and based upon the materials that we've received and reviewed, $8 million of that would come from the city funds. I believe that the auditor, Mr. Frigge, in conjunction with the mayor-elect and the mayor, and I'm sure with some administration input, have agreed that we could finance the balance with a 1.2 mil levy with a 10-year sunset provision, meaning after 10 years that would expire. That would incur enough money for approximately an additional person to help maintain the facilities as well as to improve these products and improve these facilities. Mr. Frigge shared with me earlier that he's done a pro forma based upon the St. Mary's golf course and believes that we would probably break even. He just shared that with me today, and he may want to comment on that in a minute. That's kind of, I don't know if that answers your question. I didn't really know where the mayor was going to go with his response as well. I think everything I said is reiterated in the packet as to what the mayor provided. But if you were looking for concrete information as to where we are. That's kind of what I believe you're looking for.
Yeah, appreciate the information. I know at this point, we're trying to hear as much as possible, so we probably will go around and just hear, even though it's in the packet, just so that other people can hear it as well. So, Mr. Frigge, do you mind talking about the financial side? Because obviously, it's an exciting thing. I think there are a lot of good things that can happen out of this rec package, but we do have to be able to pay for it. So can you talk about maybe where that's coming from on the $8 million side, and then how that works for the average citizen for
Thank
the
you,
rest
Mr.
of
Chairman.
it?
I appreciate that.
I bet you do.
Two things before I get started. I want to thank the Troy Junior Baseball board members for being here. With being flooded twice this year, you guys did a great job rescheduling games. I know that the grass looks like it's coming back. I think it's coming back. It was brown there for a while, though. As far as finances, we think that this project will cost between $11 and $13 million. We do have enough set aside that we can fund $5 million of this initiative. We look to borrow maybe a little bit, $2 to $3 million. And then the rest of it will come from the 1.2 mil 10-year levy. We look at these things and we don't look at them to make money, but we don't look at them to lose money either. After the initial investment of the $10 to $13 million or 11 to 13, we do think that based on the St. Mary's putt golf course, we will break even. Possibly even make a little money, but not a lot. The splash pad, of course, is going to be free. I'll go back to the putt. It's not going to be free, but it's going to be very affordable. Let's put it that way. We haven't set prices at this point because we don't have the course yet, of course. But we would have I think the most we would charge is $5 for adults, maybe $2 or $3 for students, and $3 or $4 for seniors. That's just me talking. At those figures, those are the ones that we break even with having summer help out there, as well as into the fall, in spring and fall hours as well. Again, we're in the talking stages of this. It's all kind of up in the air as far as specifics, but this get together today is what we're here for, is to just hash this out, talk about it, see what we like, see what we don't like. Mr. Chairman, any other questions?
Can you describe a little bit on how much the average citizen is going to pay per year?
Yeah. On the 1.2 mil levy, on $100,000 of value of a house, it would be $40 per year in additional taxes. And again, that would be over a 10-year period, so 10 times $40, it would cost the average citizen $400. This homeowner citizen, $400 over the 10 years with a $100,000 value home. You can do the math with up to the 200, 300, 400, but $400, $40 a year for $100,000 of valuation.
And if someone does not own a home and they're just renting, what does that cost them?
It will be free for them.
Okay.
It may be free. It may, the landlord may pass that along, the additional taxes. Let's put it that way.
Right. Okay. Can someone describe a little bit about what a splash pad looks like, what it is, what's going to be available with that, what that's going to look like? Who's in charge of designing that bad boy?
Patrick, you want to talk?
Yeah.
Well,
What's a splash pad?
it's a great question. A splash pad, if you look it up on Google, can be a number of things. It can run the
Right.
gamut between jets that are, flush with the surface, like you see, I believe the Green has something like that, Oxford has something like that. You can get very elaborate with all kind of furniture, if you will, infrastructure where you've got misters and you've got sprays, and then it gets more and more elaborate. Frankly, because there are so many options, we've not tied ourselves down to any, and that would be something that would be discussed, assuming that the initiative were to pass.
Okay. We also talked about, obviously, we're putting a lot of stuff out there, and it takes more upkeep throughout the year, especially in the summer when it's going. So we've got Mr. Drake here, we've got some different people. It sounds like we're going to be adding one additional person to the parks to take care of it.
Well, as part of the overall pro forma and the 10-year plan, there are actually two positions that have been included. One park laborer and one equivalent to that, whatever that position is called, and in the recreation department.
Okay.
So two front level people.
With those additional people, Mr. Drake, are you able to handle the load that's going to add?
We've not really.
If you don't mind coming up.
Yeah. Yeah, at this point, I think we're still a little bit early to make any determination for what the exact labor requirement's going to be.
Right.
I will say we just started within the last 2 months really tracking our work orders in the park department. So we will be able to have a lot better idea moving forward, especially once we get a better handle on exactly what all this is going to entail. I know also Mrs. Slater's been helping a lot on the splash pad design, and that's a whole nother kind of a ball game and another set of maintenance issues there, things we need to look at. So really it's hard to say right now whether or not that one additional person would be enough really to take care of everything we need to take care of out there.
Mr.
Okay.
Chairman,
Yes, sir.
if I might also add at this point, a lot of it's going to depend upon what our partners are going to do.
That's true.
For instance, if we add additional baseball fields that Troy Little League Baseball is going to be using, I would suggest that this action, whatever it is, be conditioned upon their entering into a memorandum of understanding that they will maintain those fields. They'll go ahead and do the mowing, the lining, and all those sort of things. So we don't have to worry about our park department taking care and maintaining that operation. So until we have that memorandum of understanding, which would probably ripen into some sort of lease agreement with Troy Little League Baseball as to those fields, we don't know how to respond to your answer, because if they do not do that, we may need 2 or 3 different individuals in the
Right.
Uh-huh.
park department.
Right.
Correct.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let me just go and add to what Al said in my comments. It really depends, in my estimation, on that support from the partners, the what I call stakeholder organizations, those willing to support totally. And it would be, in terms of the baseball, I would like to see the commitment of the Troy Junior Baseball actually help with continually maintaining those fields, especially since they're going to be used by junior baseball, and there'll probably be a tournament play on those baseball fields as well. Again, let me just say, this is an interest initiative, something that I thought that it needed to be brought out for discussion, for possible implementation, or at least moving forward. And that's why I close by saying this is not something from my perspective. It's something that is going to have to, the subcommittee is going to have to make a support recommendation or endorsement, and then it's going to go to full council for their endorsement. I am asking the park board, for obvious reasons, and the rec board to endorse the initiative. But it is just that. I'm throwing that out as something that I see as I leave office for the future of our community and the betterment of the young people activities. So I just want to clear that up too, because I do think the stakeholders, I call them organizational stakeholders, have to be committed.
Yeah. I think we've
They
got-
have to stand up and be counted and say, we are behind this project. If not, it's just an idea I'm tossing out.
Right. And I know we've got many of those in the audience, so we would love to hear from anyone that would like to speak from those specific stakeholders at this point, because we want to do, we want to see what appetite I think there is for that. So we've got Troy Junior Baseball. If you don't mind coming up and saying hi and talking a little bit about what was just discussed.
Hi, I'm Steve Mascarella. I'm president of the Troy Junior Baseball Board. I've been on the board 7 years and been president for 4. First of all, Mr. Frigge, thank you for acknowledging the hard work that my board members put in. It is not easy. It is an unpaid and thankless job. I apologize for my casual attire, but the season is not over. I will leave here, go to Duke Park, and coach my son's team. Teener season will end. I have talked to the board, and we've had some discussion, and we are willing to entertain sharing in the responsibility of taking care of the fields. We already take care of our fields completely. We contract out for mowing, basically because we are a small board. We have 12 people. A couple are able to work during the day because they work either second or third shift. I myself work on base. Dave Mitten, our treasurer, works down near Cincinnati. Jay Verneau, our major league rep, works here in town, obviously. But we are willing to entertain that. We understand the limitations of our property. We would like to discuss things and figure out exactly how this handshake basically would work. Our majors fields are some of the finest. We're one of the few that have a grass infield in the area. And because of the dwindling numbers, because we get a lot of players siphoned off into other forms of baseball, our majors plays at Piqua, Troy, Tip City, Vandalia. And we know what we like at other facilities. We know what we don't like. My son played some tournament travel. Mostly he has been based in Troy Junior Baseball for 10 years. He's played 2 years of junior high baseball. Our teeners play at Piqua, Troy, Tip City, Vandalia, Bethel, and we had the possibility of playing in Northmont this year. Unfortunately, they could not bring together the numbers this year. We also have Miami East in there, and Troy Christian has been a part of it until the last 2 years. We know what we like in other facilities. We know what we don't like. We can bring something to the table that you can't get by just showing up at Duke Park and saying, oh, that works good. As an engineer, I have a different mindset altogether. I look at things and I say, okay, I like that, but I need something else. The board is open to discussion with the city. We already work with Parks and Rec. I have probably twice weekly emails with Ali Schiffer, making sure that I'm not using the fields too much. We use them quite a bit, the Teener field quite a bit this year. We see that the transition from Noop to Duke would be one sufficient number of fields there. The initial 5 + 1 probably would have us keep in both facilities. I'm not saying that as a guarantee, basically because we can't go double headers during the school year. My phone already blows up on occasion when we play too late. If I try to put T-ball kids out there till 9 o'clock, my phone's going to explode. Actually, the next president's phone's going to explode. Like the mayor, I'm into my last few months of being president. I am going to remain on the board, even though my son ages out next year. I'm going to stay on the board. I joined the board to make it a better organization. And that's what we want to do for these kids. As far as tournaments, we would not host tournaments, and I honestly believe it would be hard to break into a baseball tournament competition. If you take some time and you look, there's probably a dozen tournaments every weekend within an hour or 2-hour drive of here. I think you stand a better chance of expanding the soccer tournament or creating a from scratch lacrosse field or tournament. That's our statement. We'll continue to be open for discussion, and I'll answer any questions you might have of the organization.
Yeah,
Go ahead, John.
Go ahead.
I just want to clarify, Mr. Mascarella, that, because we've talked
Right.
about this earlier, because I think what Mr. Capper's question was, which you started to
Right.
talk about, your board
We are on
understands.
board with this.
Yeah.
We would like to help it progress and make sure that the needs and of Troy Junior Baseball are addressed, as well as the city of Troy.
But you would be willing to provide, I think what Mr. Capper
Yes.
wanted to make sure, you would be willing to provide in-kind services or
Yes, sir.
through your fee organization,
Yes.
make
Yes.
sure that the
We
city is.
would more than welcome discussions on that and figuring out how this works out. I don't think, you don't have a proposal to come to us on that right now, and we don't have a counter proposal on that. But we are open, and we are ready and willing to discuss it. I have talked with Mr. Seaver, I have talked with Mr. Fricke, and both of them will be invited. We're going to have a special board meeting, just so the rest of my board fully understands.
What do you guys, what do you do now for your fields currently?
For our fields, we have new complex. It was donated land long before I joined the board. We have 8 fields. We have 2 fields that are for T-ball. We have 2 that are J-ball, 2 that are minors, and 2 that are majors. That serves the ages from 5 up to 12. Teener, we use the Teener Field at Duke Park. That serves the kids 13 to 15. We have about 500 kids, some of them from Tip City, some of them from Piqua, some of them from surrounding communities. I think we've attracted those people because we are doing a good job. And we would want to continue that. It is difficult. In the 7 years I've been on the board, I think we've had 6 floods. We recover. We work hard. We had no regular season games rained out this year. We went from a double elimination tournament to a single elimination tournament. That's the only game. So every team probably lost a game and a half. That is it. We have a date on the calendar. The calendar's already set through the end of next season. And it says, here's when we're shooting to have the season done. Here's when we definitely will have the season done, regardless of where we are. We do that for the parents. We do that for the president, because his is the phone that will ring. Why are you continuing, or why are you stopping?
Okay. And as far as trying to get an idea of what you might be able to do or your capabilities for the new fields, what do you do now as far as upkeep for your fields?
We mow the grass.
Okay.
Well, we contract mowing the grass. We line the fields. We drag the fields. We order the equipment that is necessary. We have a couple of board nights before the opening day where we're out there scrubbing bases with a product for cleaning tires. We're replacing new pitching rubbers and new home plates. We order windscreens. We take care of those kinds of issues. We get the weeds taken care of, and we're trying to make slow improvements. Christmas of 13, we had a huge flood, and we've been behind the 8 ball on it ever since. We're trying to recover from that, and at the same time, we are faced with sometimes numbers that fall off.
Mm-hmm. And obviously, negotiations still have to happen, but you would be capable or able to do that to the new fields as well?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Are there any other questions for him before he takes off? Yes, ma'am.
First of all, I'd like to say or echo that you do a fantastic job. We've had
Thank
several
you.
experiences out there. You mentioned that with just the fields that are being proposed, you would still need to maintain new fields to an extent, or for a certain number of people. Would it be beneficial if the city would be able to build a few more fields so that you could give up Newt Park?
Likely so, yes, ma'am. The biggest concerns are until they get into majors, which is our 11 and 12-year-olds, having a kid out there, and minors tends to run the longest. Those games run 2 hours easily, sometimes 2.5. You're starting at 6 o'clock, that's an 8:30 game. By the time you get a kid home, wound down, you're talking 9:15. And I will take 4 or 5 calls every time that happens. So I can't go to double headers. I can't do it for T-ball. I can't do it for minors. I can't do it for J-ball. Definitely can't do it for minors because there's not enough time. J-ball and T-ball, basically because of the age of the players, you can't go late. If there were additional fields, yes ma'am, we could. There would be that transition period where we're trying to figure out how to make it work, how to get our people there. You know, I've read comments in the past, you use the schools. Correct, before my time, but now it's a logistical nightmare. We use youth umpires. If I've got 2 kids who are scheduled for minors and suddenly I need 2 in J-ball, somebody's going to have to take those umpires from one set of fields to another. And a person who doesn't know me fully, I don't know that they want that, even though, you know, regardless of my background, they don't know me or any one of my other board members. I trust every one of my board members. We all go through a background check every single year, all our coaches. If there were additional fields, yes, we could do that. But in the meantime, I think there's going to be a transitional period where we have Newt and we have Duke, and we're playing more games at Duke than we are at Newt. But we have to play some at Newt just to get us away from that doubleheader.
Right, right. Also, there's fence banners generated by companies. I'm assuming that there's some financial benefit to Troy Junior Baseball for those, and I'm wondering if, and this might be a question for down the road, but would something like that be permitted on the city field for the benefit of Troy Junior Baseball? In other words, if they're maintaining the fields, can they put up banners on the fences that would be generating funds for you?
Yes, ma'am. It helps offset our cost. I can provide the members in here a breakout of where our money goes. We do not have a lot of reserve. Dave Mitten's our treasurer, and he can back that up. But yes, those banners offset. We try to keep it as low as we can. We're a little bit higher than other neighborhood areas, Tip City, Piqua, but they don't make up their games. Tip City does not make up games until they've rained out 4 of them. We try to make up every single game. We're not always successful just because, June was an extremely wet year, or June. It was very difficult for us. I handle scheduling. I was redoing the schedule every couple of nights to get games in. Those banners are important. They help us offset it and make it more affordable for people. We are trying to make it as affordable as we possibly can. We have a community chest where, you know, kids who are 5 and 6 and 7 years old, they grow out of their shoes if they got cleats before they're barely broken in. We try to pass those on. Baseball bats, gloves, same way. So yes, we would love, if we had that kind of capability still, it makes it a lot easier for us to take care of the fields. We have our own mower. We have a very large commercial mower, which is great. We have a gator, which we're running into the ground by dragging, but we have other things that we're working on.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Do we know what the precedence is on that for allowing private organizations to put up banners on city property? Are we good on that? No. Okay. Mr. Cappers, do you mind commenting on that?
The Board of Park Commissioners have taken a strict stance so far that there's no advertising.
Use your mic.
There's no use in using the mic, it's not on. Can you hear me? So anyway, Board of Park Commissioners has taken a strict stance on non-advertising on public property for the benefit of the organization. You know, it's the city tax dollars that are used to go ahead and purchase these properties and maintain and update these properties. And if somebody wanted to use the properties, that's fine. And we permit, on occasion, we have permitted advertising be placed up during the game on, temporary signs, but no permanent structures. Now, I'd be interested in knowing how much those signs generate for your organization, because that might be a real problem.
We can provide you that number.
Okay.
Revisit that.
Oh, yeah.
They're doing a lot of work.
Yeah, but you're not putting in any capital contribution towards the improvement. Okay. How many, if I may continue?
Yes, sir.
How many Troy participants do you have as opposed to Pickwick Tip City?
Are you talking what
Yeah,
percentage of our organization?
Yes, sir.
98%, 97% are, what's happening is there are reasons they're coming to us. I'd rather not, in a public forum, discuss those. But they are coming to us because we are working as hard as we are, and we're trying to run organization as best we can. As an engineer, I see a problem, I want to create a solution, implement it, and move on. And I think that's had a positive effect on our organization.
The reason for the question is I just want to combat any
No.
issues that might come from because of allegations that your organization tenders membership to other cities
No.
that don't pay the tax that include this place.
No, it is a small percentage. I would say it's easily less than 5%.
Thank you.
Okay, it looks like we've got another question for the gentleman.
There was a time, I know two of us have been longtime members of Troy Junior Baseball, back when people only wore black shoes. There was a tiered entry fee. Kids within Troy paid an amount, and persons who chose to come from others paid a different amount. Does that still exist?
No, sir.
Okay.
There is a tier in that T-ball league costs $80, J-ball, minors and majors, and teener cost $100. And that is set, and it's not been raised in a while. Teener, the cost of certified umpires has gone up. We likely will have to consider that this off-season. And our board members, I will point out, our board members work year-round. We do take a short break in July and August, basically because we're all tired. But once we reach Thanksgiving and until the season is over, our focus is on those kids and making sure those fields are safe and ready to use. Our season will end Thursday night, Lord willing. The last teener tournament game will be played, and it's going to be played at Vandalia, to be honest. They have 3 fields that are of the sufficient size, so we will play there tomorrow night, we'll play there Wednesday night, we'll play there Thursday night. So, no, we do not have a tiered system. Basically because the numbers were so low, it didn't, from outside of Troy, it didn't make a lot of sense. If those numbers were to increase, we probably would consider that. Basically, especially if we were using city facilities.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Troy Junior Baseball while he's up from over here? Sir, appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.
I'm going to a game.
We're going to have other board members in the audience. It looks like they're going to be able to hang around for public comment if you have any questions. Awesome, thank you. Are there any other organizations or anyone that would like to add information before we open it up to questions?
Soccer.
Soccer?
Yeah.
All right, let's hear from some soccer people. Who do we have? No soccer.
Nobody, obviously.
There you go. All right, no soccer. We're not hearing from soccer. Okay, thank you. Any other organizations, anybody wants to put input before we start asking questions? Sir, you have input?
Yes.
All right, come up, state your name and address, please, and then go ahead and give one.
My name is Matt Williams. My address is 522 South Market Street, so I live right down the street. Well, first, to try to summarize this without taking up too much of anyone's time, I'm involved with the skateboard community and the skateboard park. And I realize that we're talking about Duke Park here. So when I saw the proposed, budget for this, I felt that there's a good opportunity for the city to consider, it doesn't even necessarily have to be a skateboard park, but I feel that there should be a segment in this large park for, like an all-wheel park or something where people can ride their skateboards, they can ride, their scooters and bikes. And nothing against, the ideas that the city has as far as the baseball and the soccer, but I think the fact that there's not a single person here representing the soccer community says something. And I often see empty soccer fields and empty baseball fields, and I rarely ever see a skate park that doesn't have somebody riding around on it. You rarely see in a day's time somebody not riding their bike or their skateboard or their scooter. So I think, these types of things are growing substantially as far as popularity, and people are getting older who are doing it. I'm 42 years old. I come from a skateboard background. I've skateboarded since I was 11 years old. I'm 42, and I work in the skateboard industry. So I just thought I would request a consideration for a skate park. I mean, again, I know we have one. The city has been very responsive. Jeremy's been, I've been talking with him, and he's been helping improve what we have, but it's really, in my opinion, a Band-Aid. These are modular metal ramps that, take a lot of maintenance, whereas if you create a small segment in Duke Park that's concrete, you eliminate a lot of the maintenance. There's no, it's not a team sport, so you're not on any schedule. You just, you have a place for people to use the park that will likely use it daily. And again, not to say or be disrespectful in any way to, those who are sports enthusiasts with soccer and baseball, but I see a lot of empty baseball fields more than I see them being used, and a lot of empty, you see what I'm saying, soccer fields. So, just wanted to put that out for some consideration, and, hopefully at some point I can sit down with one of you guys more on an individual basis and dive into details. But I have a long background in this, and thanks for your time.
I appreciate the perspective on that. I feel like we don't hear as much about that. Mrs. Knight is going to put that in the minutes, and then maybe look at meeting with this community, start talking about that. What other questions do we have from the committee members here? And then we're going to go into council, and then we'll definitely open it up. Yes, ma'am.
Ken Seiler, I'm going to put you on the spot here, if you come to the microphone. Can you talk to us a little bit about how these things are scheduled and how that would work from your perspective? And maybe you don't know all that yet, because this is just an initial discussion, but
Are we talking about
baseball fields, the soccer fields.
current
Yeah.
scheduling use?
Yes, please.
So there's really kind of, I guess, two types of groups. One would be our groups, our programs that are run internally through the Recreation Department. An example of that would be the girls softball program here in Troy is run through us. We then also have outside user groups. There's multiple baseball groups. Troy Junior Baseball, for example, as Harry mentioned, the Teener group uses the Teener Field at Duke Park. We have Acme Baseball, which is high school age kids, summer recreational programs. We work hand in hand with the schools. So Allie Schiffer, who in our office, kind of handles the coordination of all of that amongst our internal programs and outside user groups. We don't, for the most part, with a few exceptions, we don't really schedule fields for practice use. It's involved enough just to coordinate scheduling of game use. Practice use is primarily on kind of the external fields, not really at Duke Park like we're talking about this evening.
So outside user groups submit a field use application to us so that we have some paper trail of when that is, what they're requesting, what type of fields they're requesting, so that we can make sure that we coordinate that use amongst all of the groups so that we don't have conflicting scheduling for baseball, softball, soccer, whatever the type of recreational activity may be.
So
So I
are we
don't-
running, oh, go ahead.
I don't know if that answers your question or if that may lead to additional questions.
Of course it leads to additional questions. So are we running short on soccer fields? Is that hard to get scheduled?
Jeremy may be able to help me with this. We have a significant challenge with regard to scheduling soccer fields. In addition to scheduling of fields, we also have had a challenge over the last several years as there continues to be more and more demand for soccer fields, that none of the fields ever have an opportunity for rest. So the condition of the fields do continue to deteriorate, and that has become more and more of a challenge for Jeremy and the park department from a maintenance perspective. So we've experienced increased numbers over the course of the last several years between us and the Troy Soccer Club. So there are a continuing number of additional teams that are in need of fields. And so, yes, from a soccer perspective, it certainly is a challenge. Speaking specifically to Duke Park and the facilities themselves, the other problem that we have, not necessarily just purely based on field numbers, but logistically, the south end of Duke Park is a significant challenge. The number of fields down there do not have the adequate amount of parking spaces to accommodate those fields. And so that needs to be improved drastically. There's not really a drive-through, it's kind of a dead-end parking situation. And when there are more than 2 smaller size fields being used on the south end of Duke Park, there is not enough adequate parking to accommodate the needs on that end of the park. So soccer, there's definitely a shortage of fields between Duke Park and Archer Park, which are really our quality fields that we have to provide for teams to play on. It's a challenge with those 2 facilities combined, the number of fields that are available. The 3 fields that would be added at the south end of Duke Park, I think, would accommodate that demand and also provide an opportunity for the Parks Department to be able to provide a field or 2 during any particular season, the opportunity to rest. There's really no opportunity for those fields to rest. From late February to early March is when teams they're chomping at the bit to get out there and start practicing on them, until late October. And during the window in which they're not being used is not really a time for Jeremy to be able to do the repair and maintenance on those fields to allow grass to grow and to be able to continue to maintain those so that we have quality fields.
So then would you guys also be scheduling the new baseball fields that we're talking about?
I think that's still to be determined.
Okay. I think that's it.
Right.
Hold it.
Go committee. No, that's fine. No.
Right, thank you.
First comment is, I don't have any for you if you want to sit. You're good.
Ken, I have a question for you. So, I would imagine, just from my personal experience with the Troy Junior High Baseball Club, that if we did build these new fields and we did rely upon you and your staff to schedule, you would run it similar to how we run Market Street and Duke now, that the organizations would schedule, but then they would be responsible for providing their own umpires, their lining. You would, I think we could pay for lining. I think we write you a check every year for lining the fields, for use of the lights, for that sort of issue. Is that, you would be willing to do that, I'm assuming, for these 5 fields or 6 fields?
Yeah, I think the coordination of that
for outside user groups would still be that they would go through us, apply for the use of the fields. We would coordinate that between our office and Jeremy's office. As you mentioned, facility users have the option of, in terms of baseball, for example, whether they choose to line and drag their own fields, and or if the game happens to be, or the tournament happens to be at night where they choose to use lights, there's fees associated with those pieces, but that again is an option that the user group has.
Yeah, and those are consistent across the board, right? I mean, you would, Troy Junior Baseball would pay the same that Troy Junior High Baseball pays, and the same as Troy Juniors would pay. We would just envelop these new fields into our existing program.
Correct.
I don't have anything further.
Good. Any other questions for Mr. Seiler? Parks Rec is good? Okay. I think that's it. Thank you.
No?
Ready.
Well, the first one is this, having been involved with youth activities for a number of years, this is a huge commitment on the partnership of the various organizations who want to use this stuff. There's all kinds of little nuances that can occur. If one takes care of the field and the other relies on the city, that doesn't work. Concessions can be an issue. What I don't know is who is in charge of coordinating and establishing cooperative guidelines, cooperative efforts, field design, needs of the facilities itself, parameters for scheduling. There is a potential that the ball fields could make money. There's potential, I think, that putt-putt might break even, but baseball could if it were given an opportunity to host tournaments. Having walked that walk for a number of years, there's financial revenue and there is some solid community reputation that can be developed if that opportunity is there. So that's like another possibility. I do not know, because I'm no longer in the experience of travel ball, select teams, and all of that, how that has impacted Troy Junior Baseball with its scheduling, nor do I understand exactly how it's impacted soccer and the need for various fields. But I don't, do we know as a group, who is the singular coordinating entity to supervise all this? And how do we determine if this thing's successful? Is it a money's number? Is it a kid's number? Is it the ability to maintain the facilities? How do we determine success?
Well, can I speak to that? Mr. Twilliger, I mean, with all due respect, I don't know that we got to that level of micro here because it hasn't even been approved yet. So I think that the genesis of this was truthfully driving past and seeing flooded baseball fields and saying, how can we fix this and what's the issue to fix the problem, which led to a discussion about if we're going to do a levy, you'll need to do a levy in November because we don't want to compete against the schools who had already announced that they were going to have an additional levy in the next year in the primary. So I think I think your points are extremely valid, and I think it's important that, and maybe, if you're, willing to help set on that committee, and I know John Frigge said on Troy Junior Baseball, and I see Jay Verneau out there and Wade Westfall, they're both baseball people. I'm willing to give up my time, but I don't know that we don't even know yet that it's going to occur, so I don't know how we can put together a plan on how we're going to manage these fields yet at this time. But I think your question's valid, and I think it's an important issue that, truthfully, the administration needs to get together and once it passes, if it does pass, we need to be ready to go. But right now, City Council hasn't even acknowledged that they want to put this on the ballot. So I don't know the answer to that question beyond trying to explain how we got to where we are today, which is we wanted to solve a problem which was flooded baseball fields and helping the kids.
Good?
Yep.
I see where Mr. Twiller is coming from. It's tough to recommend something if we don't know those details sometimes. I like the putt-putt idea to where we have to hire a putt-putt manager to run that thing out there, or does somebody that's existing now take that over? It would be nice to know those types of things.
The city of St. Mary's has high school and college kids man it during the hours that they can during the summer. And then if I'm not mistaken, they hire people from the community for like the May and September and October timeframe. They keep theirs open about 7 months out of the year, actually. And they play somewhere between 8,500 and 9,000 rounds of golf. So it's a busy facility. The concessions, there are questions. And I've been saying from day one that there are a lot of questions that need to be answered. But we can kick those out. We'll get to those. But as far as the labor part of it, I think we'll have enough high school and college kids through the summer, and we'll be able to have enough. We'll find people.
All right. Okay. Thank you. What other questions do we have from council? Yes, ma'am.
I'd just like to make a point of clarification because I think it was mentioned that we won't be competing against the schools in November. They do have an operating levy on the ballot. Troy schools do have an operating levy on the ballot in November. They have a 5.9 mil renewal. Upper Valley Career Center has a 1.5 mil new levy on the ballot that Troy will be voting on as well, in addition to this one. So we are against, I don't want to say against the schools, but I mean, we are competing for the same tax dollars at the same time.
Thank you, ma'am.
So I just wanted to mention that.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Phillips?
Yes, have we talked to Troy Christian High School and their needs also, since they were part of the last discussions on baseball fields and suffered the same fate as New Park does? Have we reached out to them?
Doesn't look like it.
Seems something to consider.
Good. Thank you. Any other comments or questions at this time?
I'm, having gone through this within the last 18 months or so, this is something that the outside organizations have they've got to step up big. They've got to step up big in order to get my support.
I know we've seen not something similar, but obviously recreational out at Duke Park get handily defeated recently, so it will be an effort to make those things happen. Mr. Schweizer?
I am for anything that's going to help the kids be able to play baseball throughout the season. They have flooded now over the past, is it 6 years now? Those fields have flooded and they have had to cancel games and reprogram games and things like that. My understanding is much of the funding that has come from various sources has dried up, and no pun intended. But the source of funding has, for lack of a better term, dried up from areas like Troy Foundation and things like that. We've got to find a way to help kids play baseball, the all-American sport, obviously. There's obviously a lot of things that need to be ironed out, a lot of the things that we're getting down into the weeds too tonight. And I guess my question is, what are we looking for tonight? Are we just looking for a recommendation from council to advance this into further discussions and talks? And the other thing that I would be very concerned about is I do not want to hurt the general fund at all. So whatever we do, we still have to maintain an adequate amount of cash and reserves to take care of debt service. Anything that may happen in the future that is unforeseen. But overall, I'm for this at this point.
Thank you. Mr. Frigge, where's the 5 million coming from?
I'm sorry.
The 5 million that the city can put forward, you know where that's coming from?
We have postponed West Main Street until 2022, I believe, because of extra funding from a couple of different sources, and we can use that money to fund this, yes.
Okay.
We're in good shape that way.
So it's not going to come from the general fund?
It will come from the general fund.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
But it leaves the general fund in good shape.
Yes.
I have a question. So if this levy is passed, is it a definite thing? It's kind of hard. You put what comes first, the chicken or the egg? How much can we plan if we don't know if the levy is there, if the money is there? We can't really move forward with plans till we know if the community backs this, but the community wants to know what the plans are before they back it. So we're kind of at an impasse. I think the park board is at an impasse with this. There's some things we need to know before we can pass it, but can't pass it till we have more details.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
This concerns the process. If we take a look at wanting to raise $12 million, and we're saying 8 of it is coming from city coffers, and 4 is going to be coming from the tax levy, we can go ahead and make a recommendation of the initiative, not yet spend the money until we see if the tax levy passes. If the tax levy passes, and if we still have some heartburn concerning things like contingencies upon the cooperation of our other partners, then at that point in time, we don't have to spend the money. We don't have to go ahead and take from the auditor the amount of the millage, right? I mean, it's not required. So we can go ahead and forward with the initiative, if that's what you're talking about recommending tonight, is the initiative of the expenditure of funds and the tax levy, and then take care of some of these other micromanaging things later on. If I can continue.
Yeah, that's kind of
we
where
had,
I'm wondering.
the city fathers a long time ago, before I even came to town in the late 70s, purchased the McDade property for the purpose of enhancing recreation in this town. And that was great. It wasn't a large piece of land, but it's a piece of farmland to consider. Then the Dukes and Robinsons purchased the farm to the north of that, and that generated Duke Park. We then recently bought the Yules Camp property, and now we have a very nice set of acreage that we can go ahead and expand upon for our purposes. To answer the question as to whether or not I would recommend the $12 million for recreation as community, well, as president of the park board, hell yes! Okay, we're going to go ahead and take that money and make additional improvements and amenities out there. I still have some questions. I asked for a pro forma on the putt-putt ball. I did we hear tonight that it's at least a break-even proposition. That's great. But overall, I think what we're looking at is, will it enhance the quality of life of our taxpayers, our citizens? And if what we're doing is going to improve the quality of life of those individuals, then the decrease in, or the increase of the city participation in those amenities out there probably warranted, similar to what we have with Hobart Arena and the golf course. I'm concerned about the location of some of the amenities, but that's one of those things that we can take a look at after we see whether the tax levy passes. Thank you.
Perfect.
If the levy passes, do we have to move forward if things don't pan out?
Are you talking about in terms of accepting the collection?
Yeah.
I believe there's always the opportunity to not collect upon council's council action.
So if we find out that the community is behind it, we can say, okay, now we can start making plans and ironing out the details. And if those details do not iron out, we can back off and say, we are not moving forward with this and cancel the levy.
Yeah, and just to round back to your original comment, question, chicken and egg question, because we had a lot of internal discussion about that. When Operation Recreation failed, for whatever reason it failed, one of the first things that we did, Park Board and the staff, was start to update the park master plan for the whole city. We started with a pretty comprehensive survey. I believe there were over 600 people that answered that survey. And from that survey, what we recognized is that people, admire Duke Park, that is the gem of the community, that had the Operation Recreation been focused in various other ways, but just to Duke Park or mostly Duke Park, that it may or may have had a better opportunity, that there were certain amenities that they would like to see at Duke Park that are not there at Duke Park. From that information, so we exhausted a little bit of resources to get to that point. We then re-engaged based on that information with MSA Sports, who had done the preliminary design work for the Operation Recreation Initiative, to upgrade or to update that plan focused solely on Duke Park. Gave us 3 or 4 different options. The group narrowed it down to what the mayor is recommending to you. Again, spent some resources to get to that point. And then the group said, okay, we've spent enough money here. We really need to see what the community wants before we continue to do the detailed drawings, to get into the weeds, if you will, on answering a lot of the questions that we're coming up with. We didn't want to start really exploring answers to those questions, not knowing if we were going to take it to the next step. And so the mayor and the staff felt that at this point it was time to get a decision before we exhausted a lot more effort and got really detailed to the next point, which would be the council seeing detailed plans, the Park and Recreation Board seeing detailed plans, and really getting down to brass tacks on what the amenities would look like.
Good. All right, we're going to keep going around the horn here. Any questions or comments? Mr. Lutz?
First of all, I would like to thank the mayor and the mayor-elect for their leadership on this. I'd like to thank the auditor and Mr. Titterington as well. I was in meetings with Mr. Sievert talking about this a few weeks ago, and there were some very difficult decisions and some difficult discussions that were had, and I think what we have in front of us tonight is a good product of high-level discussions that took place on what we believe this community is truly asking for. If you take a look at the Parks and Recreation Survey that Mr. Titterington referenced, I believe close to 80% of folks wanted some type of casual recreational activity, which a splash pad provides. We keep on hearing from, well, at least I do, from younger citizens, and notably their parents, that there's not much to do in this town for a certain age group. Miniature golf helps support that. Miniature golf is also something grandparents can do with their grandkids. There's a lot of intergenerational activities that are a part of this. I'll be the first to admit that baseball doesn't ring my bell, but I will say that, when one child has to play a baseball game, it would be nice if there's something else for other children to do with their parents at this facility. We spent a lot of time and a lot of effort coming up with the conceptual plan that we believe meets the needs of this community, meets the needs of those stakeholders which we've identified, in which we believe that will come and help us get this thing past the finish line. I am somewhat confused by the level of micromanaging discussion we're having at this level. I would dare say that a discussion of this type, especially with the Park Board and Recreation Board in an open meeting like this, didn't happen with Operation Recreation 2020. And my notice to the citizens is, look, you have the stakeholders here in this room. You have the folks that are going to make the decision to put this ballot in this room. Now is the time for you to ask your questions. Will we have all the answers? No, but we have enough of the answers to put this thing on the ballot, and we have enough of the answers to get this thing across the finish line in November. I am convinced of that. We need your help to have this happen. We need your help to continue to make this a community where folks of all generations can live, work, and play. Were taught in a school that we didn't build. We all drank water from a well we didn't have to dig. We're all going to die and be buried in a hole that we don't have to dig. The fact of the matter is we have an opportunity to do something special in this community. Let's not waste it. Thank you.
I'm not sure I can follow that one, and I make a living talking, so I don't know that. Look, here's my 2 cents on this. We have all observed the flooding that occurred on 25A on Newfield. I received a text from my memory on Facebook was a guy named Brian Addis, who a year ago sent me a letter after I'd just been elected that said, can you help solve this problem? I really think we need to applaud the mayor and the mayor-elect and the auditor for recognizing and you know, Mr. Phillips and Mr. Twilliger and Mr. Heath and those of you that fought so hard for Operation Recreation 2020, you were put in an awkward position. That was a very big, expensive levy that people said no to. And we and didn't want, maybe, I don't know. And we listened to that. And when I had discussions with Mr. Frigge about the finances of this, we wanted to keep it low. It's a 1.2 mil levy. The initial levy, the one with the decimal point problem, was 2.1, I think, 2.2, something like that. So this is almost a mil less than what the initial one, which really probably had an awful lot of support when it was put on and came back. We learned, we listened. This solves 2 problems that I've heard in my 55 years of growing up in Troy. 1, why is my game canceled? And 2, Mom, there's nothing to do in this town. And I heard it for the last 20 years with my own children, and I probably said it to my parents. And we have a opportunity, as Mr. Lutz said, in my opinion, to change that and to provide some opportunities. I would encourage anybody, even if you just Google it, to look at the splash pad at Huber Heights, to look at the Casey Geiger miniature golf course. If you haven't been up there, they're not commercial enterprises, but they're very nicely done amenities to the recreational programs of those communities. And to Mr. Frigge's point, I think they charge $3-4 at St. Mary's. And I've been there 3 times now, and it's always crowded. And it provides a nice opportunity. I think somebody posted on Facebook, I can imagine going to have my kid play in the splash pad, going to play miniature golf, and then going to get ice cream. And if we can keep that at a $20 per 4-person family deal, that's excluding the ice cream, I can't cost to that, but that would be a nice amenity and a nice thing for the citizens to do. So I really appreciate everybody's time. I do appreciate the efforts of the prior people who led this charge prior to us. I know they had a high mountain to climb. I would like to extend a thank you to the 5 members of Troy Junior Baseball that are here. You truly are the primary stakeholders in this for a number of reasons. Economically, it's like the big head with a little skinny body, and the baseball fields are the most expensive part of this. We are glad to see, I know there was, we wanted to see what level of support we got from the board, and I'm very encouraged to see 5 of you here. It's greatly appreciated. We will need you to help lead the charge. We will need you to talk to your parents. We will need you to talk, assuming it's put on the ballot. We would need you to continue to spread the word that enough is enough, and we need to do this for the kids. Don't have anything further.
Perfect, thanks. And I know there are a lot of comments and questions in the public, and they're raring to go. What other comments do we have on this side? Everybody good? And ma'am?
Just one more comment, and I would just like to say that I agree with what Todd has said as far as the splash pad and the miniature golf and everything. I'm not against any of that. I would like to go one step further, though, and do the extra 3 or 4 fields that the baseball needs to get it out of new fields. Because 5 baseball fields is not going to solve their entire problem, and there will still be games scheduled out there and have to deal with flooding. So if we're going to put this much money into a project, I think we need to go that extra mile and do it right and do it once, rather than 3 years down the road still be begging for money because we still need fields and they're still playing out at noon. So I think, in my estimation, this is the time to do it right if we're going to do it. And 5 baseball fields is not going to cut it. So I think we need to, do the extra. And I believe that the reason that you didn't hear from soccer parents tonight is that there is a Trojan soccer club, and I don't think they were notified. So I just think that, now I would like to hear from the park and the rec board.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think, did you want to say something?
I do have a question, Mr. Cappers. If we sold naming rights for these baseball fields, is that a possibility, or is that advertising out there?
We've always taken a look at the commercial use of public properties and if we do naming rights, it has to be done. And we have permitted certain signage in certain areas of our parks as long as it's done tastefully and not in large block letters. When asked, Premier Health was going to go ahead and put wind signs along the football stadium all the way around. We said no. What we're really concerned about eye litter, naming rights. Come back to us with a proposal. We'll take a look at it. As Susan said, we're flexible. While we're inflexible.
In our discussion, instead of field 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6,
the freebie field.
We could have the campers field. Yeah. And that's how we could build the other fields as well.
But the other building the other fields would cost how much more money? And then how much more money?
Oh, the additional fields would be anywhere from $3 to $4 million. Again, it depends on how they'd be designed.
Altogether, or one of them? How much is one, how many, you say 3 to 4 million?
3 or 4 million to add that additional 5 fields.
5 field
as part of it. Now, you may save some marginal costs if you only do 3 or 4 of those fields, but your primary costs are the infrastructure. It's the buried stuff. It's also the lighting. It's the conduit. It's getting everything, put in place. It's not cheap. So once you make that investment, you are talking about additional millions of dollars.
Perfect. Thank you. We do want to open it up to the parks and rec boards that took their time to be here. So what other questions and comments do we have before we shoot over there?
The only thing I have to say is I use Duke Park a lot. My husband and I walk there 3 or 4 days a week. It's a great park. Some of the comments were, the splash pad's too close to the dog park. Is it smelly? Is it going to be a problem? It looks like the plans have put that in a place that it wouldn't be a problem. And I walk by that dog park all the time, and it's not a smelly dog park. They pick up after themselves. And I do see the putt-putt being a great place for a family to spend an evening. I'm a big fan of it.
Thank you, ma'am.
Just real quick, a lot of the discussion is centered on baseball, and I know that's a huge part of it. That's what started the whole discussion several years ago. What we haven't focused on is the other amenities, and like Mrs. Westfall just said, Duke Park is heavily, heavily used. If you're out there on a weekend, during the evenings, we now have Timba, which is our mountain bike trails that are housed out there. That whole group, we have one entrance in and out of Duke Park. So there's kind of an inherent flaw in the design. We didn't know back in the day that this was going to be developed into what it is now. And with one entrance in and out, when these tournaments get over, we've got multiple tournaments going on any given weekend. We could have a soccer tournament, a baseball tournament going on simultaneously, along with the timber riders that are trying to get in and out of this one entrance. So one thing we haven't even touched on tonight, I think Mr. Seiler just started to, was not only do we have the additional amenities, we have the solving the problem of the kids out at Newt Complex being able to be out at Duke Park. But we also solved the problem with the overplayed soccer fields. Mr. Seiler touched on that. I can vouch for that. Soccer enrollment is up tremendously with all the concussion protocol, and enrollment in contact football is down. We're ordering more soccer goals now to make fields where we didn't have a field before for this fall. And so this will alleviate that problem as well on our soccer fields, but then also provide 2 additional entrances into and out of Duke Park along with additional parking, not only to accommodate the additional amenities, but also to help alleviate the problem that we already have. So even if we don't do anything, we still have the issue of the congested, overcrowded parking that we have at Duke Park now, and then just the one entrance in and out. So I just throw that out there to say, I know a lot of the talk and the focus has been on baseball, but there are a lot of other pieces to it too that I think we need to be sure that we focus on, and it's more than just the baseball that we'd be benefiting from this.
And Mr. Gray, before you sit down, I know most people do know who you are, but just in case anyone in the crowd doesn't, maybe your name and what you do within the city.
Yeah, Jeremy.
And then
Yes, sorry, go ahead.
you're going to be receiving some different buildings and all that. How is that going to help you as well?
Sure. So my name is Jeremy Drake, and I'm sorry I didn't introduce myself at the beginning. I've been with the city for 21 years. I'm a Troy graduate. I've lived here all my life. I am the current park superintendent. I started here as a laborer and just kind of worked through the whole system, and so very vested in the city, both as an employee and as a citizen. Our current operation, we're in a very small building adjacent to Hobart Arena. That in itself creates a little bit of an issue. Our maintenance barns, most of our equipment is stored at Duke Park. Our maintenance barns are already at Duke Park. So I have a staff of 8 full-time people and 4 seasonal people that meet at our maintenance facility next to Hobart Arena, and then have to get out to Duke Park to get their equipment, their mowing equipment or whatever piece they're going to be on that day. And so we've kind of got this constant going back and forth. Our serviceman, our mechanic, is housed in that building at Hobart Arena, and the equipment that he is often working on is out at Duke Park. So there's that constant going back and forth. So another piece of this that we haven't talked about is a maintenance building at Duke Park at those barns, so that our employees will report to the same location where their equipment already is being housed out there at the park as well. So that will simplify our operation tremendously by having everybody housed in one location.
Perfect.
Anything else? Thank you.
No, thank you. And then from the rec department? Board?
So I'm the president of the Troy Recreation Board, and when we meet monthly with Mr. Seiler and the staff, there are always issues with not having enough fields for families and children to play on, whether it's baseball, softball, soccer. We could actually add a lot of leagues, a lot of teams to our different soccer programs and baseball programs, but we just can't because there's not enough time on the fields that we currently have. We provide programming on the park property, whether it's Duke Park, Troy Community Park, Coburn Arena, Troy Aquatic Park, all through the city. The baseball and the softball fields, the soccer fields, they will be used. The new ones will be used heavily. I know in the past, I know Mr. Cappers can probably speak to this, we've added disc golf to Troy Community Park based on the recommendation from Mayor Beamish. And we converted several tennis courts out at Duke Park to pickleball. Those are used very heavily in the mornings by our senior citizens. Who don't really want to do the strenuous sport of tennis. It's a lot easier, and it gives them an opportunity to get out and exercise. The survey that we have attached in here showed that there are a lot of families do want a splash pad. I was surprised by the number of respondents we did that requested that. So I think a lot of people have spoken. For a $100,000 house, $40 a year, that's not a real heavy burden to lift. So that's all I really have to say, and I'll open it to the other board members.
If the levy does not pass, is the whole program or the whole idea kaput?
No.
So we won't do anything. The city won't spend $8 million if the voters don't go anywhere.
I can say that that is not on the 5-year plan to do anything at all, especially not at the level of $8 million. We will continue to maintain our assets out there, including the asphalt and the preventive maintenance that we try to do, but nothing new, nothing capital.
And exactly what are you asking us to do?
Well, per the memo, the recommendation is to endorse, and in fact, the Park and Recreation Committee to recommend to the council placing the 1.2 mil 10-year levy on the ballot, recognizing that there are two pieces of legislation at two consecutive meetings that have to be passed to get that onto the ballot.
So all you're asking us to do is to recommend to city council that they put it in front of the voters and they decide?
Correct.
Good. Any other questions, comments from either of these boards?
Just as a mom of a young family, I am just very excited personally about the splash pad for my toddler, but I think that just putting it in front of our community is a really great place to start. And there cannot be a change if there's no option.
Perfect. Thank you. We do want to open it up in just a minute here. I think there was one more comment, Mrs. Zoda, that you wanted to say. And then we are going to open it up to everyone in the audience. If you're positive about it, we absolutely want to hear that. If you're concerned about some different things, we absolutely want to hear that as well. Do ask that you remain respectful, right, in our discussion here.
I do not see any way to move forward other than putting the levy on the ballot. People have questioned why the emergency. The emergency is strictly to meet the deadlines to get it on the ballot. Other than that, there is no emergency. Troy Junior Baseball, those kids may see this as an emergency. They need some dry fields to play on. The emergency is getting it onto the ballot. And there's a lot of questions that cannot be answered until we know if it passes. This all kind of started with all the flooding It wasn't like this has been in the works for a long time. So it feels a little rushed, maybe, but that's because with all the flooding, it was like, man, we have got to do something and take another look at this. The survey itself is being addressed in this proposal, the wishes that were expressed there. I think there's a good deal of people that will pass this levy and want to see this done. I know there are people that are not in favor of it, but I don't think we're going to know until we let people vote. And to do that, we have to get it on the ballot. So, who wants to speak?
We do want to open it up to anyone that would like to come talk. Please state your name and address, and then like to hear what you'd like to say.
Good evening, Brock. My name is Brad. I'm doing good, thank you. My name is Brad Barner. I live at 105 Crestwood Drive, and I just have some questions regarding this.
Is that Piqua or Troy?
Troy, here in Troy. Actually, outside of Troy. First of all, has any flood study been done on that Hills Camp property? Because the river does run pretty close to the western border of that property. I'm a little concerned that we're moving from one floodplain into another floodplain.
The portion of the property that was in the floodway is what we sold to the Miami County Park District and received $7,100 per acre for that property so that they could turn it into some conservation land. So that was stripped from the property.
But are we still going to get flooding then up onto the Hills Camp property that you're looking at, even though that may be conservation property?
That is not in the floodway like the Park District property is.
One thing, the reason I ask this is if you look at any flood warning on TV, particularly up in Shelby County, what's the first thing that floods up there? Custom Border Park, always the first thing that floods. Ball fields are located there. I'm a little concerned that we're going to be running right into the same problem that we had at Nuke if we locate the fields there. Second of all, I'm a dog owner. I would like to see some improvements made to our dog park. We have a very good dog park. Could be better.
Give me some examples.
Agility courses, agility equipment. There are a lot of dogs out there, and I own a Siberian Husky myself, so I don't know if she would ever do agility. But I'd like to see some agility equipment out there for some of the dogs that are agility trained. We don't have that right now. It's a pretty wide open space. Secondly, I'd like to see that fountain that sits outside the entrance moved inside. Because the way it's set up now, we have to leash our dogs, take them outside the park to that drinking fountain just to get them a drink, unless we bring in our own water. But the rules say that we can't do that. Is that a fair statement, Mr. Cappers?
I don't know of anything prohibiting that.
Okay.
I've brought water in for our dog before.
Okay, maybe I'm wrong. Third thing, and I think this is going to be the big one, this levy. If you're looking at putting an extra $3 or $4 million into five more baseball fields, isn't that going to jack up the millage to pretty much where we were in Recreation 2020 when it failed?
It's still represented to me that the millage is full mill less than what was asked.
But that's with 5 fields.
Operation 2020 was an income tax levy of 0.25%.
Okay, so why don't
it's not even the same. I mean, one's a millage property tax versus a sales tax.
But you just said a little bit ago, Mr. Sievert, that it was 2.1 mil.
For the initial one that had the decimal point problem.
Okay, so when did it change from 2.1 mil to 0.25%?
When they did the second levy. The first levy was withdrawn because of the decimal point issue, and then they had the Operation Recreation 12. I wasn't on council, so somebody else can clarify this for me, but then you had Operation Recreation 2020, which was the sort of grandiose second sheet of ice, Miami Shores, Senior Citizen Center, everything, and how that was going to be funded was 0.25% income tax. So one of the things we talked about when we talked about bringing this is it better to do an income tax or a mill? And we made the determination that the millage process was significantly better, and we could do it at a significantly pared down rate than what it was in the in the first one. So I know that's confusing. I understand your confusion. Actually, I think the newspaper even had it a little bit different on the other. But there are two different funding mechanisms. One was through the millage on the property tax, and the Operation Rescue 2020 was a 0.25% income tax, which, I mean, that would have generated millions and millions. We're just looking at a small pared-down mill levy.
Well, I guess then why can't we go with the income tax again? I guess it's my question, because you're talking about putting this on the backs of people who may have high enough property tax bills as it is, who are retired on a fixed income, such as my father, my parents. Now, they live outside the city limits, so they don't have a dog in this fight. I will concede that. Okay? But you're talking about putting this on the backs of people who may not be able to afford it. So why not go with the income tax? Now, can that income tax be rescinded after 10 years? Don't know. I don't know the ins and outs of statutory law like you folks do. So that's something to consider. Thank you.
Well, let me ask you a question. Wait, don't wait.
Okay.
I don't own a dog. You said you own a dog.
I do.
You live at the dog park all the time.
Yeah.
The splash pad, if it's in close proximity to the dog park, is that going to have any repercussions with the dogs that are in the dog park?
That's a good, I can't speak for the other dog owners.
Right.
I can't speak for them. Maybe we need to bring the dog owners in. Maybe we need to consider the dog owners as stakeholders in this, since that might affect you're talking about stakeholders. Let's get some of the dog owners together and talk this
I'm
out.
concerned with toddlers using the splash pad,
Uh-huh.
dog owners wanting their dogs to run through the splash pad. Is that?
That, well, I don't,
Based here or what?
you might be a little bit, but I could see that as a potential liability down the road, but let's cross that bridge when we get to it. We're just in the initial stages right now, so let's cross that bridge when we get to it. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I can't answer that, Alan. I really can't, because I don't know. I wouldn't let my dog run through that splash pad just for that reason, because of the liability of a toddler, and my dog's rather active, okay? My dog is very active. She likes to jump up on people. So that would be a concern for me.
That would be a problem.
That would be a problem, correct. And I wouldn't want the city to have that liability. But that's just a matter of me controlling my dog. Now, can I speak for other people? No. But I think you hit upon a very good idea, is let's get some of the dog owners involved in the process.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Appreciate it. That's good timing. Okay, who else would like to speak, please?
As a dog owner.
Heather, what's your name and address, please, ma'am?
I'm sorry, it's Cindy Schaefer, and I'm at 24 North Short Street. As a dog owner,
Thank you.
I lost Bella, but I wouldn't be putting her in the splash with the other kids. I just wouldn't be taking my dog and doing that. I have a couple questions. How many baseball diamonds can be built on there? What's the tops that we can build on there? I'm not saying now or not, but can you do 10 more or 5 more or how many more?
Well, the way the Operation Recreation configuration was drawn, it was 12 fields, and that did not consume all of the Hewells Camp property. Recall that north of that ball field complex is approximately 15 acres. It's kind of a green space buffer, or farming buffer, I guess is what we should call it. So it has some additional capacity.
Okay.
Can I address that real quick? Because this is becoming an issue, and I think it kind of needs to be addressed, and maybe Mr. Vernot or some of the other people back in the Troy Junior Baseball can talk about this. You kind of have to look at baseball fields in 3 different segments. Mm-hmm. You have, I don't know if you can hear me, you have the T-ball fields. The actual configuration that's being discussed, which again, it has to go to the ballot, there's been no finality to it, is a 5-wheel field of what are called 225 fences, which would generally take you, Jake could probably tell me better, about to junior high level, to 12-year-old level, somewhere like that, would be playing there. And then there's a dedicated T-ball field, which would be solely for the T-ball kids, because we've all seen the poor T-ball kid that runs to third instead of to first and doesn't really grasp it. So you need a smaller environment for them. Then there's a dramatic drop-off
once your kid hits junior high and the number of kids that continue to play baseball. It's just historic. I mean, I grew up a baseball kid. My kid grew up a baseball kid. I know Mr. Westfall's here. Mr. Minton, Mr. Verneau could probably tell me if I'm wrong on this. But historically, once you hit about junior high level, your interests go to different things. So there was some thought about the layout of this. Initial was going to be 2 4 traction fields, and with input from Troy Junior Baseball, they thought a 5-spoke field at 225 fences would be better for their uses, because they can then take the advanced kids and let them play on the Tina Field, North Market Street Field, what I reference is the Post 43 field, but there are alternative fields for 13 and up that don't exist for the 13 and below kids. So I don't want to interrupt you. You're welcome to say, well, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I do think that there needs to be some discussion on that. And if I see some nods back there from Troy Junior Baseball, is that kind of how you guys see this? Yes. Okay. So
I was wondering, when they said they had 500 playing, and it's different, my daughter played soccer and tennis and baseball. That was a lot of kids that we're serving. So I just want to make sure if this passes, then you can add on to those things. The other thing is, this is kind of for Bobby, I was wanting to know what happened to the handicap baseball diamond that had been talked about, because that's not come up in here this evening.
We have been looking for private financing on that or funding, and at the moment that is very difficult to come by. So that kind of cooled our working on it.
Okay.
Just lack of funds.
My father had the first putt-putt in the tri-state area. I worked it. I was the number one gal you paid, and got hit a few times with the kids trying to keep it on. I think that's a good idea. Seemed like he was busy all the time. I wanted to mention that. My other question is, and then I'll be finished. I'm concerned about Riverside. I know this is in the future. Are you expecting to expand the Riverside Drive out there? Will you be doing that? You've got 2 lanes out there right now.
No, everything that when we've looked at the designs of that as we've gone through the phasing of the project, the traffic engineers, the engineering firm that we've been using has said that even with the expanded demand on that park and the expanded traffic, that the 2 lanes that we have give properly sized, because we are looking at slightly wider lanes, is more than adequate, and that an additional lane would be, not to put too fine a point on it, a waste of asphalt.
Okay, I just was curious. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, ma'am. Let's go ahead and continue.
Chris Davis, 412 Ella Street.
Thank you.
I'm going to take advantage of what you said. I live on the east side of town, down by Race Drive area. I have 2 parks within walking distance. Neither park have a bathroom. No porta potty, nothing. I'm all for building up Duke Park and making it great, and the splash pad's fine with me. But I take offense to what he said. I live on a fixed income, so $40 a year extra does kind of hurt me a little bit when my landlord raises the rent. I'm not going to say anything else about it, but I would like to see some bathrooms put in down at the other parks besides just Duke Park. I played baseball at Newfield. I played football with all the Little League people too. I'm all for that. I just need some bathrooms in other little parks besides just the one. That's all I need to say. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you.
Name's Josh Rindler. Live at 370 West Dakota Street. I think that this is a great idea. I just want to start off with that, with the baseball, the soccer. I ref soccer in the fall here in Troy. It is a growing sport, so I agree with that. I also hear from multiple people that they would like a splash pad. All that I ask is that you reconsider about the 18-hole golf, simply because I've been in talks and had meetings and emails with Wright Pat Credit Union on small business loan for myself. to get an 18-hole golf course. I've talked to the people downstairs at the zoning development. Sorry, I'm a little nervous.
Good.
Zoning development to see where I can have this developed at. They showed me spots of the map for all Troy. I feel like I found a good spot, which is behind Walmart. You all know where you guys are putting the new hotel at. If you go around that little bend there, there's a daycare. There's some land being sold back there that I've talked with the realtor with that, and I've also, like I said, I've been in talks with Wright Pat Credit Union as far as getting a small business loan with this. I just ask that maybe you reconsider this, so that there wasn't two. I think that Troy's too small for 2 miniature golf courses. If you guys were to go through with this, I would basically have no choice but to back out of mine, because I don't think that I would be able to survive, so to speak. That's pretty much what I have to say. I also want to say that my down the road, 5, 6, 7 years, I'm not really for sure. I would like to add also more entertainment, once I start to get good money coming in, maybe get a go-kart track or something going, something else that also brings in a lot more people into our community. So, like I said, I've been in talks with this with Wright Pat for a while. I know that you guys, just like me, we need something for our youth. I've been talking with family and friends for years now about this. And finally I've stepped up, at the beginning of this year and talked with Wright Pat to get this going. I just wanted to put that out there. Maybe if you guys didn't go through with it, you guys could do something else. She said something about handicap. I've also heard other people talk about handicap playgrounds. This gentleman over here talked about skate park. There's other options that maybe if you guys didn't go through with this 18-hole golf course, if I was to go through with it, that you guys could do something else, more parking. Like, where'd he go? This gentleman over here said about parking at Duke Park. There's just, if you didn't go through with that, there's more opportunities that you guys could have if there's any other things that you were thinking about. I just wanted to state that I had been planning on putting an 18-hole golf course out behind Walmart. I feel like that's a great location. All the restaurants are on that side of town mainly. Someone said it'd be great. I think this gentleman, Todd Servant, said take your kids out to Splash Pad and then hit some golf balls and then get some ice cream. There's Cold Stone ice cream right around the corner there. There's plenty of places that, families go out to eat. They'd be like, hey, would you like to go shoot some golf or whatever? So that's all I got to say. Anything? Nothing? Okay. Thank you.
We appreciate it. I think we're all fans of capitalism, free enterprise, and business, so please give government private competition. That's a good thing.
Good evening. I'm Emily Westoof. I live at 1002 Linwood. My question is the intersection at Adams and Riverside there.
Okay.
I've heard rumors that they're talking about a circle there, and with what you guys are talking about with soccer tournaments and that kind of thing, I'm wondering, because the traffic coming out of Duke, most of it filters down into a four-way stop sign.
Mm-hmm. And your question is if there are any plans currently?
Is there any, are you guys thinking about that in relation to this initiative that you're talking about?
Thank you. Mr. Titterington?
Much like we did with McCaig and Dorset, we have been looking at different options. I have not settled on any option. That would be something that would have to come to council. Have not exhausted all of the options yet. One of them could be a roundabout. Another one would be a more classic stoplight. It all depends on the amount of right-of-way that we have, what sizing it would need to be, the other complications at the intersection with the arena, with the junior high, some of the traffic that goes through. Not settled on anything yet. Each one of them has their own impacts and their own costs, but we're not there yet.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you, ma'am. That was a good question. All right, who else would like to speak? Hey, we know this guy.
It's me. Lester Connor, 1210 South Clay Street, Troy, Ohio. It seemed like the beginning of this was for the fields that flood to be moved. And that sounds like that's like $4 million to do that. And then Ms. Baker mentioned about the different schools that we're going to have levies on. So that's going to be an impact. I would say we're trying to move too fast with no know what we're doing yet as normal in Troy. I would say go ahead and take the general fund money and move Duke Park and move the diamonds out here that are flooded. Get that done first for those kids. That's the main priority right now. The other priority that you're all talking about is to make money at Duke Park. It's always money here in Troy. So, let's worry about the kids first, get that done. And then I'm going to read this here and get this off my chest. When you do anything, it is for 5 or 10 year plans. And once a levy is accepted at that poll, it is always renewed. Our governor of Ohio just made a gas tax of 10.5 and 19 cents on diesel. Will this allow you and the commissioners of them to remove the $25 from our license tags, since you're going to get $900,000 from the state of Ohio? Will that eliminate that? I don't think so. You're going to take it all. Okay. For the same thing, or keep them both, why should seniors pay for this when we don't have a way to put money back into our resources? We live on fixed incomes. Somebody mentioned $40 ain't nothing. Not if you're making big money, it ain't. But if you ain't making money, it's a big hill to climb. And in Troy, we've been climbing hills and dales for a long time. It's always 5 years, 10 years, and they never cease. Once they've done, they always renew them. The citizens, we just can't afford this anymore. I mean, I hear people all the time saying, I got to move out of Troy. I can't live here anymore. I can't afford it. That's sad. That's sad that you are trying to get the elite people with credit cards to live the high style, and that ain't going to work. Sooner or later, the bubble's got to bust even on that one. And you're going to have a big mess on your hands. Then I go on down here. Roundabouts was paid by the general fund. Treasure Island, which one's sunny, it's Treasure Island, one's raining, it's sunken treasure. So here we go. It was out of the general fund, but are we going to move that sooner or later because of the flooding issue? I don't know. Maybe we'll have to. But I'm saying, let's use that general fund. We've got $21 million in the general fund. Use it. Don't keep coming back to the citizens. We're paying double on everything. What does the city tax do? What does it? It's like that little girl on TV. Well, what does a dishwasher do? I'm saying the same thing. Well, what does our city tax? What is that used for? Just for payroll? We got to use. Something ain't right in this town. Something just ain't clicking right. I mean, it just ain't making it anymore, big people. And then it's, I'd say, with the parks out there, the ball diamonds, my suggestion is use the money out there from the general fund to move them first, or let's get volunteers. Troy's good on volunteers. Let's get the church people. Let's get the senior kids at the schools and the other kids at schools. Let's get the ball parents playing out there. Let's get them. The city of Troy donate some trucks for us to move the fences and stuff in. It won't cost that much. We'll volunteer. I'll even help. I'm 77 years old, but I'll help to save $1. I mean, that's what life's about, saving $1, not spending it all. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think at the beginning of that, we got support from moving that over, I think is what I heard. Who else would like to speak, please? Going once, going twice? No sale. Okay. think more conversation is up the bat here. So looks like we're going to go ahead and try to wrap this up. I appreciate everybody. It's been a marathon meeting here, absolutely. Before we close, I'd like to hear the thoughts from the Recs and the park boards here on whether you would like to recommend putting this on the ballot. Or if you need more time.
On behalf of the Board of Park Commissioners, I would make a motion, since it's our public meeting, to go ahead and approve the initiative of placing a $4 million levy on the ballot for the purpose of improving Duke Park, with the details to be ironed out after the initiative passes. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? It's adopted, so if we reflect that in our minutes.
Appreciate that, Mr. Capper. Okay, and Mr. Hobart?
I'll keep this nice and easy and just pretty much duplicate what Mr. Capper's proposed as far as the motion. So I guess those in favor signify by saying aye. Second, I'm sorry.
It's been a long meeting.
Mr. Dunn seconded. Those in favor signify by saying aye. Okay, the motion is passed unanimously.
Okay, Mr. Hobart, I appreciate that. So we'll put it to the committee. Now we've got the approval and recommendation of the Parks and Recs departments. Any further comments? How would you like to move forward?
Recommend to proceed.
Good.
Proceed with the community. Let us know if we should move forward.
Okay, we're gonna.
With emergency?
You guys okay with emergency, both sides?
Yes.
Okay, just because of the ballot coming up, right? So we're unanimous in moving forward with this recommendation. Are there any other items to come before us, or is that enough for one night?
Nothing further.
That's it, I appreciate it. Thank you for everybody for coming out. This is what makes things work when people come out and talk and have these discussions. More to come. Stay updated for future meetings on when we're going to be talking about this. Okay, this committee is adjourned. We've got one more committee after this, which I believe is Streets